never going to get old to me.
No, we're dancing in the background with
we'll have to start recording early one time so that everybody can see it.
I mean, I just did it.
Yeah, right.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, Law Moms and lovers of Law Moms. I'm Kaylin King-Goldfinch.
I'm Hannah Hembry-Bell. Hey, everybody.
We're Law Moms Out Loud, and today we are here with very special guests. All of our guests are special. This is a particularly special guest. My very dear friend, Lindsay Gray, who, well, we're going to be talking all about it. Lindsay made a very brave move, and she had this very, well-run, successful law practice and had sort of like existential career angst and a need and a passion and a calling and a desire to do something different. And she launched a nonprofit. And so we're going to tell you guys about the nonprofit and about...
Well, and it's why we're late today. So everybody may be like, wait, I thought you're on at 12:15 on Fridays. I'm sure you all set your alarms and have been like counting down the minutes. But Lindsay was a recipient of her organization of a grant today at the Travis County Women Lawyers Association. That's our group here in Austin that we're part of, and received this awesome grant, which I'm sure she can tell us about. But anyway, when you're the award winner, you have to close the place down. So we're here a little bit late all together, but glad to be here.
Yeah, Hannah and I didn't win any awards. So
I know.
We were sitting here waiting.
We were ready. We even shot a quick little YouTube video.
We did. That was good.
I know.
We
We're
made good
using
use
our
of
time
it.
wisely. Then we just did it. Do the thing.
Yeah. Okay, you go.
Okay, Lindsay. So here's what so you start because y'all, they know each other really well. Okay, so Lindsay and I met, I guess we met today. I don't know. I've seen your name. I don't know if we met.
Yeah,
before.
I don't think, definitely not in person.
Yeah. So why don't you start from the beginning, sort of explain a little bit about your career journey? Like you go to law school, law job wise, tell us about that path up to the point at which you decided to kind of take a left turn.
Sure. So I started my career really in law school as a public defender intern. So my 1L summer, I went to the University of Denver for law school in Colorado. And my 1L year, I interned at the Denver Public Defender's Office and just fell in love with criminal defense and litigation and trial practice, and specifically representing, one of the world's most vulnerable and marginalized communities. And so did that throughout law school, got a lot of experience at the public defender's office, then went on to be a public defender.
What's a public defender for people who may not know that?
Yes, thank you. I forget that in Texas we don't have.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We're a little behind in a lot of ways.
Okay, backing up. So in Colorado specifically, there is a state public defender system, which means that under Gideon versus Wainwright, an old Supreme Court decision.
Ooh, court and Supreme Court. Supreme Court cases.
Sorry.
Very emphasis law. No.
Sorry. So most criminal defendants have a right to counsel. It's a constitutional right to counsel. And so Colorado has a state system that actually funds it. And so we have a state public defender system. And so we have different offices throughout the state where attorneys represent, are just assigned criminal defense cases. And so you represent people accused of crimes. And so you start kind of representing misdemeanors, DUIs.
Like anybody, or maybe they have to meet certain qualifications?
They do. Yeah. They have to either, when you're in custody, you're presumed to be, the word is commonly used as indigent, but then if not, they can come in and fill out an application and become.
They just don't have enough money. Is that what that means?
Hire a counsel. Right.
Okay.
And so, represented lots of people in criminal defense proceedings for a few years. And then we moved to Missouri, to St. Louis, which is where I'm originally from. And I got a job in private practice. Criminal defense, private practice. Really disliked it.
Why?
Yeah. So the Colorado Public Defender System is one of the top public defender systems in the U.S. and it's very client-centered. Like I was sort of raised legally in everything is about your client, and oftentimes the court's job is to drive the train at your client, and your job is to stand in front of the train.
Okay.
And do whatever you can to either do your best to advocate for your client, and that can mean a number of things. Sometimes even just standing in their corner and giving someone a voice that wouldn't otherwise have it. Yeah. And so that's sort of the world in which I had come from, and also like my strong bent of mind. Like I strongly believe in those things. And so I think some of it was stepping into any private practice, but then also St. Louis, just sort of the culture there is very different.
Then St. Louis versus Denver, Colorado. I think that'd be a little different.
It's real different. Yeah. And so very sort of,
what about it?
There was like a good old boys club,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, and it was like everybody knew each other. And like there were certain times where judges would chastise me for not knowing things. And it's like, I'm clearly the new kid, like, and you can't dispel some grace. Like, and the other attorneys, I mean, there were a few nice people, but most of the time they weren't that helpful. And I perceived that I was like taking a slice of their pie.
It was like competitive.
Yeah, I think there was some of that. And then also in St. Louis, so I practiced in Colorado in the most difficult jurisdiction in Colorado.
Difficult in what way?
Like, for example, all 3 people on death row when I was in Colorado were from that county because that elected prosecutor just went after people. And offers, like, so in criminal defense, it's a lot about, do you take a plea offer? Do you go to trial? And the offers were so bad. And so I got a lot of trial experience because the sort of the mentality of my office is like, you have to give me an offer that makes sense for my client. Otherwise, like, we're just going to go to trial. There's no point. Like, I'm not
like, it wasn't a good enough deal for the person to settle.
Like, if I was like, okay, Hannah, you're accused of a crime, you can either like plead guilty and maybe the judge will give you a lighter sentence for not going to trial, which they're not supposed to do, or you can go to trial and take
maybe
your
you
chances,
win,
right? And maybe you
go
win.
home.
And we were just like, we're not in the business of doing that. And I perceived that a lot of the culture in St. Louis in the private bar was like, oh, well, I'm too busy, or, oh, I'm going to plead open, which basically just means plead guilty with no plea bargain concessions.
Yowza.
So that, and so that the judge will like have mercy on me because I'm not going to trial.
Can you imagine?
So
I don't trust.
And so,
trust the judge.
well, and it's really not permissible for a court to do what we refer to as trial tax someone, right? Like, you exercise your constitutional right to a trial and then you get penalized for it. Like,
but they probably
I've never heard
do.
that before. But
I mean, that was the mentality. And so,
like, oh, you wanted this trial, so
I was
you
like,
got it.
what is happening? And then like criminal defense attorneys were becoming like municipal prosecutors at night. And and there was a lot of like what in Colorado we would refer to as debtor's prison, where it's like someone got a bunch of traffic tickets and they couldn't pay them, so they ended up in jail. Like, and I just would constantly be like, what is happening? And the whole bar was like, what do you mean what's happening? This is just how it is. And then Michael Brown was killed in St. Louis, and the New York Times was like, what is happening? And I was like, thank you. Somebody thinks this is not normal.
When was this? What year was this?
So this was in 2012 and 2013.
Okay.
So it was, so during all of this, I was pregnant with my first child.
Oh, man.
And so about 7 weeks before she was due, I gave notice that I was not coming back. And so like, I worked really hard to get all my stuff situated and memos for all the cases. And so then when my daughter was born, I took about 8 months just off. I didn't work. I had a mom blog.
Woo! I did not know that.
I love learning stuff like this.
It was called The Leaking Boob.
Can we still find it online? Somebody Google it.
It is not online.
Put it in the
Somebody like
comments.
hacked it and then made it like a porn site.
Oh my god.
So, but my husband.
So do not, please. Not at work, at least.
But do comment.
Yeah.
You check it out.
And so my husband made like a book for me of all the posts, which is fun because it's really like, I think my like most popular post was like the shit they don't tell you about.
It's okay.
About having a baby and like, the disposable underwear and like the stuff where
so sexy.
Anyway, anyway, all right, that was in another life. No, but actually, I really thought it was my thought that I would quit and then be home until like all of the children that I intended to bear were in like a school
kindergarten.
Age. Yeah. And
that could be a lot of years.
Can be a lot of years.
Right?
And what I realized was that working is about 100 times easier.
Preach.
Yes. I'm like, oh, I get a cup of coffee that I don't have to reheat every 30 minutes.
zen.
I know. Just sit at a desk, write some things down all day, type.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Except for then you have like every 4 hours the dairy farm that like goes on with
Yeah.
But yeah, so
So then you were in. So then
So,
you didn't go
okay.
back.
Blog work.
right. Okay. So then I realized that that just wasn't me. And I think a lot about, so this one's going to go back to the 90s or early 2000s to that movie Mona Lisa Smile. It's with Julia Roberts and Julia Stiles, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's at
Ooh.
Wellesley, and it's like, anyway, Julia Stiles is the student, Julia Roberts is the teacher, and they, Julia Stiles is super, super smart. And, you know, Julia Roberts is trying to instill feminism and independence in all these women. And Julia Stiles decides, ultimately, she gets into Yale Law School, and she decides ultimately to go with her fiance to Harvard. And so they have this big clash. And what Julia Stiles says to Julia Roberts is, you told me I could be anything that I wanted, and this is what I want. And I think about that. I mean, you know, I think about that all the time. And
Isn't that funny how some little
movie,
like teeny
bopper
bopper
movie,
can
right?
change your life.
I know.
It have random. I mean, it adds
Yeah.
up.
Isn't Julia Stiles the one who did that horrible hip hop ballet movie?
Yes. But it was not horrible.
Two things I hate about
okay.
you,
I'm
right?
sorry. I've just seen like some clips lately on TikTok.
Yeah.
Does
So
not
what-
stand the test of time.
So, like, what about that? What did that quote? What resonates about that with you? What made you bring it up right now about
Yeah.
your journey and being at home?
Yeah. I think about all the moms, right? And it's like, well, be independent so that you can go and work 80 hours a week, or like be independent so that you can, you know, do XY thing that society still crushes you with. And for me, like, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom for a period, and I could be anything that I wanted. And so I went and did that. And when I decided that it was time to go back to work, even though I had originally told myself something else, it was what I wanted to be. And so I could go be that too. And just how, like, as we have seasons in our lives, you know, the point of independence, feminine independence, wasn't to go and just live up to something somebody else told you. That's the whole point. And so I feel like I've been really lucky to have, you know, the go hard litigator that's working hours and hours every week for indigent criminal defendants, to being a stay-at-home mom, to being an entrepreneur in private practice, to now being in nonprofit entrepreneur.
Yeah, because then, so you at some point leave Missouri and get to Texas.
Yeah. So, okay. So I had my, private practice. So I had my private practice.
We have the bridge to get to the nonprofit. I'm helping you. Come with me across your bridge.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm talking about like Michael Brown and constitutional rights.
No, I love it. I love
We're
it.
loving it, right? We're loving it.
So I stayed home. I about 8 months in, I was like, oh, I don't
love
know
this.
about this. I want to work some. And so I formed a little LLC, and my buddy in St. Louis said, you can come use my conference room to meet clients.
Yes,
and so,
please.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started a private practice in my sunroom, and, you know, had like one afternoon a week at that point where I was, you know, maybe meeting with clients, maybe not initially. And I did some criminal defense, but being a Spanish speaker and having worked with many non-citizens, I knew I wanted to do more immigration. And at the public defender's office, like, you don't take immigration cases.
Yeah.
You know, you take the adjacent stuff. But
Wait, how did you learn Spanish?
I took it in, like, you know, in childhood, and then I minored in college, and I studied in Argentina for
Okay.
my like year abroad.
Ooh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, super cool.
I have so many questions about that, but not that's not the topic for today.
Yeah. And so did that, and I found a mentor. And so
In St. Louis.
in St. Louis, a woman by the name of Suzanne Brown, who like gave me a little contract work, but also just really took me under her wing, and sort of going to the whole, like, we can be whatever we want. Like, I remember being in her office, where my office was, with my second child, and like having her in one arm and nursing her, and like talking with Suzanne and then my law partner about like special immigrant juvenile status. And it was so empowering to be like, yeah, I'm doing it. I can be these things, and it works for me. And so Had a lot of flexibility with my private practice. My husband we were in St. Louis for my husband to get a PhD, and then he got a job at UT. And so then we moved to Texas.
Okay, we're pausing before we get to Austin because no, this is great, but we have to like say hello to the people that are giving us love online. So Patricia Fernos, who was once a Spanish teacher of mine, hi, is with us and says excelente. Becca gave us a heart. Saul gave us 2 hearts, a blue one and a yellow one, maybe for Ukraine. Thank you, Saul. Christy, Norcross, yes, woohoo, and Christopher.
Yes. Hey guys. I was going to say Christy's probably, so Christy has been on the stay-at-home mom. I know Christy, like a stay-at-home mom journey, and then has decided she wants to work too. So I feel like she was like celebrating that. She's awesome. She works at the farm. Thanks, Christy.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome.
And who's this Christopher who said only Hannah a hello? I don't know about me and Lindsay.
He's my cousin-in-law. Hello, Chris.
Hi,
oh, look at those cute babies. He's got cute babies.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll forgive you for not saying hi to us because your babies are cute. Okay, so, and this is a part of the story that I know, but it's okay. You can tell them anyway. So tell us about getting to Austin and then what happened.
So I got to Austin, and our firm had grown some. And so there were several people in St. Louis, and I moved to Austin to open up our little branch. Austin. The Austin office sounds so official, but it was really like one of those Regis offices.
Yeah, like
I'm just remembering the first time you and I met in person, you were doing like an exploratory trip to Austin and came to my office. And at that point, this was before we had gone virtual. So we were like busting at the seams in our little office, and you're like, well, I don't know, maybe we could like share space.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
I would love to, but I just don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah.
It all worked out at the end. We didn't share office space, but it worked out.
Yeah. And so coming to Austin, so in St. Louis, if you spoke Spanish, you were an immigration attorney, and you like seemed to care, right? You could, the market was very undersaturated. So you could get a lot of business just because the need was so huge.
Yeah.
Coming to Austin, it was really interesting because there are so many great immigration attorneys in Austin, and lots that speak Spanish. And so there was definitely like where is my space? Because like I don't want to compete with my friends. Like I don't want to fill a need that's not there, And so had a little existential crisis.
Yeah, how did that make you feel going from sort of like demanded, desired, like wanted there, and then to come here and the start over? We talked about this recently with Karen, just the start over feeling.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, like, and I've started over in a couple towns, and it creates this, your identity is new. You're not like in St. Louis being the white girl-ish, or I don't know if you're a white girl, who speaks, who speaks Spanish in criminal law, right? And here, I mean, you're in immigration, white girls who speak Spanish, so
abound.
More, right?
We abound.
Yes, white girls that speak Spanish, immigration lawyers abound.
Yeah. So what did that feel like? Was that hard?
There's a lot of, and I think I've always had this, but Kate and I talk often about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like still, and VECINA, which I'm sure we'll talk about, the nonprofit, like people will ask us things or to do things or if we'll engage in things. And it's like, much larger organizations than us. And I'll be like,
you're talking to me?
Me? Like there's a lot of that. And so my theme for the year is like, I'm here for it. I'm just going to show up.
Oh, that's good. You have a theme for the year.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
All right. So similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you get here, and then you're starting over. You meet Kate, which like all good things come from that point. I can say myself. And then so you do the private practice. Tell us about what made you decide to leave the private practice behind, and then found VECINA. And tell us what is VECINA, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll do it in order that you stated because it's helpful, because it makes sense that way chronologically.
Thank you.
So I'm like, okay. So there have always been immigration crises, but 2017 happened, and it just kind of, things went off the rails, right? So lots of things started happening when our former president was elected, and there were a series of policies and changes that attempted to make it as difficult as possible for asylum seekers to come to the United States. In summer of 2018, our government started ripping children out of their parents' arms. And so Kate and I, by that time, were pretty close friends. Kate's firm really took the mantle of trying to find the moms and the kids. Because, the government, as probably many of you have read on the news, the government wasn't doing the greatest job of tracking the moms and the kids.
Children.
And after they ripped them out of each other's arms, they weren't even recording who belonged to who. And so I know, sorry. I know this is
I just like
re-traumatization.
Just every time you think about it.
I know.
Like, the carelessness.
But there was no
Not their
nonprofit at the time in Austin that was like, Kate's firm was doing it,
But they have like their day job too.
They have a day job,
Yeah. Shout out to y'all at Team LGL.
That's right.
The firm was very involved. You guys are amazing.
Super involved. But then, there were a bunch of non-immigration attorneys. So people who don't practice immigration law that are like, this is horrible. I want to help. But I have no idea.
I remember I had just moved to Austin and I remember seeing y'all all talking.
Really?
Yeah, just an observer, like, oh my God, this is horrible. Mothers, you don't even, they're just children. They don't know how to say who their mom is.
Right.
Oh my God, what do we do? And I remember, that's when I first became aware of you as a person.
Yeah.
That issue, it speaks to every single human being because all of us are we're children or our parents, and it's like we can all imagine.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's family separations.
Okay, so anyway, we all huddled and took the families that we could and tried to get them reunited, and so I had a mom and a daughter, that ultimately we were able to secure the mom's release and get the daughter out as well, which was very frustrating, but was a huge feat in the end. But we didn't have any capacity to train non-immigration attorneys. There's just not.
Yeah, because me, I was your audience. I would just been like, ooh, I don't think
daunting.
What do I do?
Yeah.
Well, and just the lift that it would be to teach you, for example, how to do all those things. That's somebody / several somebody's job that doesn't involve another day job, right? So that happened, and then the migrant protection protocols happened, where the government started giving people court dates, but then making them stay in Mexico, to await their U.S. immigration court hearing, which created a huge humanitarian crisis because you cut off people's access to food, shelter, stable employment options, and access to counsel. There's just the southern border on the other side in Mexico.
Why? I don't understand that.
One is
so they would send them to, I don't know. So they would give them their court date and then they would say, go back to Mexico and wait on your court date to come back. So why did how did that?
They're not, the majority of them are not from Mexico. They're migrants who have fled from their own
and then they just
country.
say, go over into Mexico.
Just go, and then they're homeless. And there's no, it's not like there's a
What
Red Cross UN refugee camp. They're just homeless migrants from all over the globe in Mexico.
And they're waiting on a date. Was it hard for them to get
date.
Back over when it was time for their date?
Dangerous.
Very dangerous. Many migrants were actually kidnapped on the way. So kidnappings were still abound, but many were kidnapped on the way to their hearings. And so attorneys in many ports of entry, meaning many cities on the other side of the border, it was just too unsafe for attorneys to go. And then some have a small presence of attorneys, maybe an NGO, maybe a couple of private attorneys. We have a dear friend, Jody Goodwin, in the Brownsville, Matamoros, that she was going over every Sunday to give little chats. But that's not access to an attorney to represent you on your case.
That's called a lunch and learn.
Yeah, that's a lunch and learn. That's except for it's on a concrete plaza in the 110-degree heat with Jody Goodwin, the warrior.
Jody Goodwin is amazing. Taylor Levy, you're amazing.
Yeah. And Taylor Levy was going over every day in Ciudad Juarez, but in Nuevo Laredo, on the other side of Laredo,
it's too dangerous.
You can't go. So anyway, a huge need, not very many attorneys. And so, but again, people being this is terrible. What do I do? How can I help? And VECINA was born.
Okay. When people were asking that, because you have your private practice, and there's people like me who don't know anything about immigration, I really was moved. I remember crying. I was worried about these moms and their babies, and the dads too, of course. And I don't know the first thing about it. But I didn't form a nonprofit. So like, what about that call of people to say like me, how can I help? What made you think I've got to answer that call?
Yeah. So, so there's a few different pieces to this puzzle,
Okay.
right? So you have the nonprofits on the ground, like the private practitioners on the ground, but like the Jody Goodwins and the El Otro Lados who are in Tijuana, Mexico, and a number of nonprofits that are there day in and day out, but they can't fill the need. Like they do everything they can and more, but they can't fill the need. And then you have private experts like Kate that have a day job and can't take a whole caseload of pro bono cases, but they absolutely can and are happy to mentor attorneys that are learning the system.
Okay.
And then you have all of the people who want to help, but don't have the tools that they need to do that. And so we marry those three pieces. And so
what made you decide you had to do that? Like what in you?
I don't think I had to do it.
Or wanted to, or felt like you should. I mean, because I'm curious. I hear the how.
Yeah.
I want to know the why. Like, here's what I'm getting at is one of the things that I think law moms and all of us struggle with is this idea of like purpose, calling. I'm meant to do something. And I think one way it's described in a book I've mentioned probably on the last show, like The Anatomy of a Calling, the universe, the phone is ringing. So it seems to me that call of like, there is a big problem. People who say they want to help, they need a bridge.
Yeah.
Did it feel like the universe was calling you? You had to stand up?
Yeah, I really did. I mean, so I went down. So Kate and I worked on family separation in 2018. And then in 2019, I went down to visit Jody Goodwin, who I mentioned a couple of times. And I went down with her to do her little chat. And then I went across the bridge the next day. 49 people signed up to interview with me and I had one day. And so like just to chat with me about their case, because they were about to cross for their what's called a credible fear, their interview with an asylum officer. And so, and at the same time, we were getting emails and, messages from people about how they could help. And then I got back to my private practice and my legal assistant, who's wonderful, but was ready to move on to her next step, gave me her notice, like literally the day after I got back from Matamoros, and was like, I'm moving to a bigger firm. She just needed to get out of like the small space. Cause I had sort of realized by that point that like, I was a little bit burnt out from like just building a business twice over. And so
it's a lot.
I was like, I don't have to support another human anymore. And I want to go do this thing. So I did. And I kept the private practice. Like I stopped taking new cases or that many new cases. And so I was able to sustain the private practice, from an income perspective, somewhat while getting VECINA off the ground. So it worked sort of like in
What's
tandem.
VECINA mean?
It's the feminine neighbor in Spanish.
Isn't that good?
I love that. I didn't know that.
Okay, can you brag for a minute on VECINA and just say, like, just quickly, like, all of the amazing things that the organization has done, is doing, like the partnership?
Yeah, because you answer the call, right? So, like, the universe, God, whoever, whatever, the world asked you to do this thing. I didn't answer that call, right? You did.
Well, you had your own call.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying, though. Like, that's why it's unique. Like, everybody listening probably has their own call, and like you picked up yours, and so like because you did that, what's the impact? Like, what's happened?
Yeah. So in 2021, we had 660 volunteers to sign up with us.
Wow, that's a lot of people. Like lawyers who go.
So lawyers, and we also have admin support. So one thing that's unique about us is that we put people on pro bono teams. So most places will just give a pro bono attorney, like I would be like, here, here's your case. We put people on a team, and the admin support person doesn't have to be a licensed paralegal, which is why we call it admin instead of paralegal help. But they help with document collection. Depending on who they are, they could draft certain things. So we have the attorney, the admin support, and then in our Spanish-speaking cases, we have a big bank of Spanish-speaking interpreters and translators. So we put people on teams. So the 660 encompasses all of them that signed up to work with us.
What is a team's goal? What's the goal?
So they take a case. So they take, So, for example, like an asylum case. So the goal ultimately would be to get asylum for
What's
their
an
client.
asylum case?
Yeah. So asylum is someone who fears persecution if they have to go back to their home country on account of like a protected ground. So race, religion, political opinion, membership in a particular social group or nationality. Sorry, that's like
jargon.
I think it's one of those things like you hear about asylum a lot, honestly. And I mean, I know what an asylum case is, but I think it's one of those things that people are like, oh, asylum. And
Yeah.
you already you either really know or you don't. And if you don't know, you feel a little silly and like,
what is
I don't
it?
think I really know what that is.
I know.
Okay.
And it's hard to explain it in a way where it's like you fear persecution you can either say just on account of a protected ground, which sounds weird, but then if you name them, it sounds weird too. And so I'm like, I haven't figured out like
so you're afraid to
smooth
be
way to say that.
in your so here's let me think. So this person who would need VECINA's help is afraid in their country. They exist with fear in their country of
they're here.
Or they got here somehow.
But they're afraid to go back.
They're afraid to go back because if they do, they'll be harmed because of protected reasons, like things like Title VII, like discrimination-y things.
Yeah.
Here.
Yes.
There. Okay.
Yeah.
So then they get to, how do they get to VECINA?
I love hearing the Hannah interpretation.
I love it.
I know that's right.
I'm like, I haven't figured out how to say
It's
it well.
really good.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, so that's where we partner. Mainly how we get cases is we partner with organizations on the ground. So I will say like, hey, so-and-so, like right now we're doing a lot of Afghan asylum work. And so we partner with Raíces and we partner with like Refugee Services of Texas, where I will email them and say, hey, we have an attorney that wants a family, or like, hey, we need 5 cases, or will you send me a few case blurbs? I'm speaking at a CLE, so I can go and tell them like, here are some cases that need representation right now. And so that's how we get our cases.
So there are already like Raíces is that the group in San Antonio?
Yeah, they're all
over. Okay.
Yeah.
I know of them from San Antonio.
Yeah.
So when I used to live there. So then they have their whole own infrastructure thing going on. So then the people who are scared to go back, I would in my brain think they're like at court, they're at jail, or something.
Immigration court.
Immigration court.
Or stuck in Mexico. I mean, they're in immigration court.
Okay. So then they somehow get connected with Raíces or they go, and then y'all are sort of a group that comes in and supports their work, not necessarily connecting directly at the jail or the court.
So it depends. So they only have their capacity for so much, right? I mean, so we will take like overflow actual cases from them where they refer us a case and we are like, thank you, we'll take it from here. And we don't have much interaction after that. Right now, we're actually just starting a partnership. They do the Remain in Mexico, the MPP cases out of Laredo, and they have a team there, but it's small. And so they have asked us to step in and get volunteers to do like translations, country conditions. So like talking about like, oh, you're afraid to return to El Salvador because of XYZ thing. Let's research and provide
what's going on over there.
It's basically, think about it like this, like all of these organizations that are doing this important work, they're like in triage mode. They're inundated with doing legal work
at the border,
at the border for the people. And VECINA brings its army of trained volunteers.
So we got this one. We
need, and then VECINA does all the work of training, mentoring, supporting all these volunteers, which is a lot of work.
Because that's what
it's a whole,
like the height of this, right? You, Kate, or taking teams down there. Like, hey, I've got this team, and we're going down here for this day.
That was we were doing. That was when the families were in detention, and we were going to do credible fear interviews, which we probably going to have to start doing that again.
Yeah. A lot of our work has been remote. I mean, almost all of it because of COVID. I mean, and because of MPP, because people are in Mexico and our attorneys our volunteers are all over the place. So
you have all these volunteers, which is good.
Yeah.
But what does that impact? Like how, obviously it impacts you to volunteer, to do good things, makes you, feel good. But what impact in the world comes from that?
That's the fun part.
So I think there's a few things, but the main 2 things I will say is one that, it saves lives. For example, Kate just mentored on a case of Dickie Grigg, who is a wonderful volunteer of ours.
I'm going to show the compass.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to get this.
A wonderful volunteer of ours who just went to trial. He's not an immigration attorney. As he would say, he has made his living off of determining who entered the intersection first.
He's hilarious. If you know Dickie.
Yeah, Dickie is a hoot. And so he went to trial under Kate's tutelage and
Jackie.
And they won asylum for this man. And so not only saved his life, but he gets to petition to bring his daughters over.
Which is like the best feeling in the whole wide world. But so Dickie, listen to this. The client wrote Dickie this letter. He worked on ships, and so it was a very like ship themed letter. And Dickie had it printed out for everybody who worked on the case, and then he had these compasses engraved with part of the client's letter. It says, "I faced extreme situations on the ocean, and afterwards I could see a rainbow on the horizon. The last 2 years I have been living in a storm without being able to see that rainbow on the horizon, but thanks to you, I now see it again."
Oh. So that's what it does.
That's what it does.
Well, so because then this guy was afraid to go back to his country. It was determined that was a credible, I know the word credible fear, right?
Mm-hmm,
Like, so that was real. It was a real thing. So he gets to stay and now not have to go back and face whatever. And that's because people like us, people who may be watching, decided to answer the call and volunteer with VECINA, and then you connect them with the people on the ground who can do it.
Right.
Yeah. So our volunteers come to us and they get introductory training, online training. And then for court cases, they get paired one-on-one with a mentor. And so the mentor walks them through, when they have questions, they set up team calls to make sure that the pro bono doesn't just say, "Oh, I signed up to volunteer." And then we're like, "Here's a case, bye." They get the support that they need to empower them to be able to save a life.
So we have only probably about 10 minutes left. So if you guys watching have questions or thoughts about anything for Lindsay, go ahead and put them in the comments now. If you're interested in VECINA and the work that VECINA does and you want to volunteer, you can donate. Where do they go?
So vecina.org will have all of those things, which is V as in Victor, ECINA.org.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
So now on a daily basis, so this is your full-time job, right? Like this do-gooder thing. I mean, really, it's easy for us to sit here like I do a job and whatever. I mean, there's different things that we do, but you are like full-time do-gooder. Okay. Do you feel that you're living in your purpose?
Oh, 100%.
Oh,
how do you know?
I feel a lot of peace, and having like the Dickies of the world or the other attorney volunteers or people who we on our closing forms, they like write, just messages about what they liked and didn't like or how we could improve. And just seeing someone write like, "This is the most impactful thing I've done in my practice of law." Like that's just being able to empower other people. I was thinking for like a hashtag for one of our end of year campaign. And I was like, we're creating change makers, but we're not creating change makers. We're not creating anyone. People are change makers in their hearts, and that's something that we can't create in them. We're empowering them, and that's so cool.
So is that the part that resonates with you is sort of like empowering other people to do good? Is that the thing that, like, if you had to say what the purpose is, or is your purpose like the end goal to help these people get their asylum?
Hannah brings the hard question. What's your purpose?
Well, I mean, I'm just so curious. I mean, I think it's just such, and I don't know.
It's
I'm
a
not trying
good
to go
one.
on,
No,
but like, okay.
I
Because
was just saying, like, oh gosh,
like,
somebody asked me
because
that.
I think it's important for you to know about yourself, right?
Yeah.
So, like, on the
Yeah.
one hand, when you think about purpose, it's obvious for any of us who are not full-time do-getters to be like, you're doing purposeful things. Like, you are literally saving this man from going back to El Salvador and getting bad things happen to him, save his girls, etc. Clear. But when you really drill down for you, Lindsay, yourself, is it the guy that you're saving in El Salvador, or is it empowering Dickie Gray, whoever this person is, to be more, do more, take his gifts and help this guy? Like, which is it for you that makes you go, ah?
I mean, you can't argue with saving lives. Like, I mean, there's something about that is deeply, deeply meaningful. But I also did that in my You know, like
Yeah,
I
'cause
did
it doesn't-
my
that's
own,
not what I
'cause
hear.
right. And that's the difference between like, you know, they say you catch a fish for a man, he eats for a day, but you teach him to fish and he eats for a lifetime kind of thing, where like I can go out and do all the asylum cases that I want. And in my lifetime, I maybe do 1,000. Like, I mean, I don't know. That's just a number I pulled out of my head. But like, but if we have 660 or, you know, 200 or 20,000 over the course of VECINA's lifetime, it's a lot of saved lives.
Sort of like the ripple in the water,
Right.
Like the stone, and that
It's
you
totally.
can.
Well, and you
Yeah.
think about all those lives and then their kids' lives and like the
Yeah.
generational
That's so
impact.
empowering, and it's exciting, and in some ways it's empowering for me because it's not really about me. Like, yes, when Dickie gave us those compasses, you know, Kate spent a lot of time on that case, and Jackie spent a lot of time, and Dickie's
Jackie
team
more than
spent
me.
a lot of time. What?
Jackie spent more than me.
Okay, Jackie spent a lot of time on that case. And so, you know, I got the compass and I was like, this is so lovely. But what was going on in my head was like, I didn't do anything. You know, like it was, again, going back to the imposter syndrome of like, but this, I don't, in some ways, like I don't deserve this. But then I had to like, first of all, it's not an appropriate way to respond to a gift.
You say thank you.
But
I
then,
can't accept this. Sorry.
yeah. Well, and I went home and I talked to my husband about it, and I said, you know, it is interesting because like not very many people work in this work day to day, and it's like, you know, when you back up all the causes, like if VECINA wasn't born, Dickie wouldn't have taken that case.
Right.
Like, I mean, that just wouldn't have happened. And so I'm very thankful for my compass.
Yeah. Is there anything for somebody who's sitting there and they have a nudge? I just have to believe that like something happened, maybe a moment, and if you remember it, like a nudge of like, there's a need, there are people who need to do it.
Yeah, how'd you know?
Step forward, it's me. That's what I'm trying. Was there a moment? Did something happen? Was there a post? Do you remember? Why did you I didn't step forward. I felt the need, right? In that.
Yeah.
But you did. Do you
Yeah.
remember what happened that made you take the step?
I think going to visit, like having had the conversations that Kate and I were having and the experiences that we have had, and then going to visit Jody and feeling burnt out in my private practice, and then coming back and having my assistant,
Okay.
like it was kind of like all of the stars. And that doesn't mean it wasn't hard. And that doesn't mean I didn't doubt it. But like it was kind of like all of the stars aligning. And I was like, I'm going to go do this thing.
And you said yes.
And I said, all right. So
do you have any advice for anybody, or thoughts, or maybe things you wish you would have known or things you would have done sooner for people who want to answer the call, like people who want to step forward when there's this need and this opportunity? It doesn't have to be do-gooder. I mean, it could just be starting a jewelry line, like
Yeah.
going to college, like whatever your thing is. Do you have any thoughts on maybe making yourself ready to say yes, or just things you wish you would have known when you were sort of not yet yes to get you to say yes?
Yeah, I think two things. The first one is it was really hard for me to be in a season of waiting.
Ugh. I don't know what you mean at all.
That.
It was really hard to move to Austin because I mean it was 2 years in between moving to Austin and like being like, I'm gonna open my Austin branch, and like immediately starting to feel like, oh, what do I want to do? And I'm gonna hire a business coach to help me do this thing with my private practice. Like there was a lot of bumbling and wheel spinning that happened in that 2-year period, and a lot of just like, you know, like I'm just not peaceful. I feel attention and I feel unrest, you know. And it's a really hard space for me to be in. And so some people are much better than others. I would put myself on like the extreme.
Yeah, me
not
and Kate,
good at it.
We're real good at just chilling, waiting on things to happen,
Some
being in
people
between.
spend like decades in that space.
Yes.
I'm not good at 10
Yeah.
minutes.
Well, and Hannah and I were talking earlier today about calling, and I really do believe that we have seasons, right? That calling is not a lifetime thing that you commit to, you know?
Yeah.
And so different chapters of our lives. And so
Like
that was really hard. Like being in that season of just like, I don't know, I'm going to explore and I'm going to build relationships, and I'm going to like maybe do something that doesn't make me all that happy for a little bit. And like, and so that was really difficult. But in terms of like the things that I tell myself every day is, doing anything that's trailblazing or taking any step forward involves exposure, and it involves risk, and it
It's
involves
not for the
vulnerability.
faint of heart. That's what I say.
No.
Because one thing I was going to share here. This week, my friend Jennifer Hargrave in Dallas, she's a family lawyer in Dallas, shared with, or maybe it was last week or something, shared with me this Mel Robbins little YouTube video about calling and purpose. So fascinating to me because I've always felt this like strong calling, but like exactly to what? Like, when do you pick up the phone? When do you step forward? So I'm just so curious when people have done it. Like, how did you know? What did you do? And one of the things I found so interesting, I wish I would have found this a long time ago, was this Mel Robbins video. And she was talking about forget worrying about your purpose, your calling. Like, that's too big, that's too grand to know. Instead, follow what gives you energy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Follow what motivates and inspires you.
Yeah.
Was that true for you in making this decision to do VECINA? Did you follow your energy?
Yeah, one of my very favorite quotes is, your calling is where your great joy and the world's great hunger meet.
That's good.
Let's put that link to the
Yeah, the
video.
video.
We'll put it in the comments. And we got a wrap. We could go on.
We have a good
forever.
question, though.
But we do have a good question from one of our best supporters. Drew Bell wants to know, for non-immigration lawyers who want to help immigration nonprofits, is it more useful to donate time or money?
Ooh, that's a good one. So
Depends on how much money, I imagine.
Yeah.
But you got to check with someone first.
We never say no to donating the money, right? VECINA is like, here's where you send the check.
Yeah, right. Honestly, but I mean, as you can see, taking on a case can literally save someone's life. And so we will never, turn down your time. At different places, because we are a small organization that's growing and we're new, we hold that tension between like, we can't support 1 million nonprofits with little funding. And so like, we sort of have this chicken egg thing that we're facing sometimes, again, especially in our infancy. And so,
Money.
So really the answer is both. I mean, I would say because of the phase that we are in, like, we will not
send money on your way to volunteer.
Money on the way. And for Drew, like, I happen to know Drew's at a bigger law firm, and that's a great way, like getting big law firms into start doing the work of
KNS opportunity summer class, get them to take a VECINA case. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for being here. This was so awesome. Apparently, I'm just going to ask everybody. I'm on my own personal mission to ask every guest, like, how did you know to do what you're doing?
I love it.
Yeah, we have a lot of guests who have been
cool
listening to their calling. So,
awesome.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lindsay.
All right, see you guys week after next.
Bye, y'all.